The Center for the Improvement of Human Functioning International presents this luncheon lecture. Today's topic, lose weight and control prediabetes with the unique power of PGX. Your presenter, Ron Hunninghake, MD.
Well, thank you, everyone. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the handout. It's a pretty big handout, and you're probably thinking, how is this guy going to possibly get through all of that material and in a way that you can understand? And so one of the things that I try to do when I'm giving these presentations, I want to make sure that the main points of the presentation are right there in front of us to begin with. And so as we go through this, I would like for you to keep 4 questions in mind that I think will help you put this presentation together and make it useful to you. The 4 questions are, what is prediabetes? Do I have it? Not me. What causes it? And what can I do? What can I do about it? And so before we begin, though, I want to give an apology. And the apology I want to make is for an all too familiar scenario that I'm sure many of you have run into. And that's where you've been to visit your doctor and you've presented some problem, blood pressure, cholesterol, aches and pains, something. And as the doctor is walking out of the room, what does he say to you? Oh, by the way, you need to lose some weight. And then walks out. I've always felt that was kind of a cheap shot because most people know that there are consequences to having a weight problem, but it's not an easy thing to control weight. It takes something special to accomplish that feat. And today, because we're talking about prediabetes, it turns out that the other side of the prediabetes coin is the weight issue. So today we're going to be tackling a pretty tough problem. And so I wanted to just get that out in front, that I think that all of us deserve more time and attention in terms of how do we accomplish that particular feat. And that's really what today's presentation is about. I wanted, for those of you that are new today, I wanted to give just a welcome and a little bit of an introduction about the center, the Bright Spot for Health. The full name is the Center for the Improvement of Human Functioning International. We see patients in the Olive W. Garvey Center for Healing Arts, the clinical arm. We have a wonderful research staff in the Biocommunications Research Institute, and we have the BioCenter Laboratory, a very high-quality, CLIA-certified laboratory that does all of our nutrient testing. And together, the composite is the Bright Spot for Health, and we welcome you. Our mission is to identify orthomolecular pathways that lead you to the discovery of better health. That's what we really are focusing on, is what you can do to discover better ways to be healthy. The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeing new landscapes, but in having new eyes. And so today we're going to be talking about a very old problem, hopefully with a new perspective. I am a graduate of the KU Medical School. I went through the Smoky Hill Family Practice Residency Program in Salina, and I've been here at the center since 1988 as the Chief Medical Officer, and every year I see about 3,000 patients using orthomolecular medicine and the Riordan Approach. Some of you may have heard of Dr. Riordan. He passed away a couple years ago, but we carry on his work here at the center. Posthumously, he was awarded the Hugh D. Riordan Professorship in Orthomolecular Medicine at KU, 45th Endowed Professorship at the medical school. The main emphasis of the Riordan Approach is the doctor-patient relationship, which we have expanded into the staff co-learner relationship. Everyone here at the center is dedicated to helping you as co-learners achieve your goals in health. We try to identify underlying causes. We characterize the biochemical uniqueness of each person. We care for you as a whole person. We use food as the foundation. Dr. Riordan was fond of saying that health is cultivating good reserves, so we work on that too. And finally, we want to utilize the healing power of nature to accomplish our goals. So with that brief introduction, that brings us back to our topic today. Lose weight, control diabetes with the unique power of PGX. What were the 4 questions that we were going to discover? What is prediabetes? Do I have it? What causes it? And what can I do about it? Well, in all likelihood, given the fact that at least 65 million Americans have prediabetes, and some estimates are as high as 100 million, there's a pretty good chance that the majority of you in the room here probably do have prediabetes. And if you're wondering, you can use the little quiz that was at your place, the pink for the ladies and the blue for the men. The way to think of prediabetes is it's a constellation of symptoms. And if you just look at one thing on there, like I often feel stressed out. Well, who doesn't often feel stressed out? I snack a lot at night. I get tired and sleepy after eating. Any of those things individually could be any number of things. But when you start putting these symptoms together, they start to form a pattern, a constellation of symptoms that we are now referring to as prediabetes. That we could say these are the subjective symptoms, but there are some objective symptoms that relate to this as well. When you look in the mirror and look down and you see yourself, then you may be asking the question, could I have prediabetes? The so-called central obesity, or as one person called it, furniture disease. That's where your chest is dropped into your drawers. And so it's unfortunately becoming all too prevalent in our country. This information is taken from the CDC, and I'm sure many of you have seen this little presentation that back in 1988 there was about 7 or 8 states that had more than 35% of their population overweight. But as we move forward 4 years at a time, you can see that these are not Democrats and Republicans, by the way. We see more and more red states reflecting the rise in obesity here in the United States. And they actually have more of these graphs that it just gets worse as time goes on. And at this point in time, 1/3 of our population is not overweight. If all of us that were overweight could become a political party, we would be a force to be reckoned with, because 65% of the American population are overweight, 31% are obese, and about 5% are morbidly obese. There are different types of fat distribution in the body, and I'm going to just talk about this for a minute. The ladies worry most about the saddlebags, this gynoid distribution, but actually that's not as dangerous as the android distribution, and I'm going to show you why in just a second here. It turns out that when fat develops in and on the internal organs, the omentum is a kind of apron inside of your abdomen, and a lot of fat can develop in the omentum and in your internal organs, and we call this visceral fat. And visceral fat is metabolically active. It actually impacts your level of inflammation and sets you up for a number of other conditions, such as high blood pressure, such as high cholesterol, and other inflammatory diseases. Here's a little cartoon about how men tend to look in the mirror and use a little bit of denial to see themselves better than they are. And women, sometimes it's the opposite. It's even a little bit looks bad. Blood pressure. Have you been to the doctor and the doctor says, your blood pressure is going up, and you're thinking to yourself, well, that's new. I never had blood pressure problems before. That can be a sign that prediabetes is starting to emerge. If your cholesterol is running high and your doctor says, boy, I think you need a statin, you should be thinking in terms of, maybe this is another one of those indicators that are part of the constellation of prediabetes symptoms and signs. And of course, as the name implies, pre-diabetes, if your blood sugar is starting to go up, then that, of course, is a sign of prediabetes. Now, I'm actually very enthused that the American Diabetic Association has come out with the term prediabetes, because what it does is that it gives us a chance to do something now before the more irreversible type 2 diabetes emerges. It's a chance for all of us to take a look at what we can do behaviorally to change the course of this particular illness. And prediabetes has its own problems, but then as you get into diabetes, I don't have to tell you about the complications of severe diabetes, the blindness, the renal failure, dialysis, amputation, just some terrible things that can happen if you let diabetes go. But what's beautiful about prediabetes is that you really haven't gotten there yet. You're what we used to call it borderline diabetes, but it didn't seem to create enough alarm in people. And the goal here is not to create alarm, but to create some kind of motivation for change. So putting these all together, we used to call this the metabolic syndrome X. And that's why I have the big X there. And actually, metabolic syndrome X really is prediabetes. Now, what was my third question? We've talked about what is prediabetes. Do I have it? You should kind of have a sense already whether or not this is something that relates to you. But if it is, you should really be asking yourself this very important question: what is it that causes this? I mean, no one would, in their right mind, would choose to be pre-diabetic, but what is happening inside that is setting us up for pre-diabetes? And that is in the center of the X, the center of the X. I don't know how many of you have been to presentations before, but the term that we're talking about here is insulin resistance. Insulin resistance. This is where when you eat something that's carbohydrate or sugar, your blood sugar goes up, your pancreas makes insulin, and insulin allows for the blood sugar, the glucose, to go into the cells and be utilized metabolically. But if those receptors are not working properly, then we have a condition of insulin resistance. That's the core feature of prediabetes. It's where they stop working, and the result is you need higher and higher amounts of insulin in order to get by. So another thing you can do is go have a high fasting insulin test done, fasting insulin level, and if it's higher than expected, that's another objective indicator of prediabetes. Now here's a number of different blood sugar responses to a glucose meal. And if someone is pre-diabetic, their blood sugar's running about 70, and they eat their meal, but instead of going up just to maybe to 120, 130, 140, it goes all the way up to maybe 180, 185, and then it comes down, and it comes down a little bit lower than what it was at the beginning. This is a pre-diabetic curve. It's very similar to the hypoglycemia curve. How many people in this room have had trouble with hypoglycemia? This is where you eat something sweet or sugary, have a cup of coffee with too much sugar in it, and about an hour or two later, you're feeling kind of shaky, or maybe you've got a headache, or you're irritable. What has happened is the blood insulin level has shot up just a little bit too high because your cells have this insulin resistance going on, and so the insulin overshoots, and by the time it kicks in, it drives your blood sugar down too low, and now you're having a hypoglycemic reaction. And so someone who has type 2 diabetes, they're way high. They're way up here. Their blood sugar never does get back down into the normal range unless they take medicine, and if you're a type 2 diabetic, taking insulin shots in the initial stages won't even help you that much. Later on, type 2 diabetics do use insulin when their own pancreases begin to burn out and they can't make enough insulin. Then the doctor will supplement in some additional insulin. But these are the different glucose response curves. Here would be the ideal curve where it stays relatively flat. Keep that in mind, because really that's our goal in terms of helping people to achieve a normalization of their insulin receptors. Now, in the past, if you went in and talked to your your regular doctor about hypoglycemia, he might tell you, well, if you've got an insulin-secreting tumor, maybe then you have hypoglycemia. Or maybe in some rare instances people have hypoglycemia. But there's a tendency in the medical profession to somewhat poo-poo the whole notion of hypoglycemia, because oftentimes by the time you go over to the lab, let's say you're having an insulin reaction, by the time you go over to the lab, your blood sugar is back to normal. And the reason is that we have compensatory mechanisms. Our bodies do not like, the brain does not like it when the blood sugar gets low. So it will send a message out to the adrenal glands. Adrenaline will be released, and that adrenaline will cause the muscles to release glycogen. And the liver will make glucagon, and will start to bring our blood sugar level back up. And so everything seems fine. And so the medical profession has had a tendency to somewhat ignore the idea of hypoglycemia. Well, now we have new technology, and a lot of what I'm going to be talking to you about centers around this continuous glucose monitoring system that Medtronic has developed. This is where a special sensing catheter is surgically implanted under the skin in the abdomen, and it's attached to a cell phone-sized little computer recorder, and every 3 seconds a blood sugar test is done, so that you have continuous glucose monitoring. Now then this instrument is attached to a computer, the information is downloaded, and then it's averaged to every 5 minutes, so that you have about 277 points, 288 readings per day on the chart. And so I'm going to show you, this is a printout of an actual continuous glucose monitoring readout. What do you see? Just a whole lot of what they're now calling volatility, a lot of ups and downs, kind of like the stock market, except the stock market's been going even more down. The stock market's got some bad hypoglycemia. And so this glycemic volatility is interesting in and of itself. But what do you think they found when they've correlated the patient's symptoms with these changes in the blood sugar readings? What they've found is that every time there's just a downward trend, even before it gets below 70. See, that was the definition before. You couldn't be hypoglycemic unless they did a blood test and your blood sugar level was below 70. Well, here, just the fact that your blood sugar is starting to go down will cause you to have what? Sugar cravings, hunger jags, insane appetite, episodes to where you have to eat something, okay? Or the irritability, or the anxiety, the headache, the depression. We're finding out that when blood sugar is up and down, we are up and down. And this is what the new technology is showing us. Glycemic volatility. That, I think, is the cause of a lot of our problems. And we're going to talk more about how we're going to deal with that. But that's a new term, and I hope you go away with that term. It simply means too much insulin. And what happens when you have excessive insulin? Insulin does put puts your calories into fat. So it promotes fat storage, which can set you up for obesity. But what a lot of people don't know is that when your insulin level is high, you cannot mobilize fat from your fat cells. It blocks the mobilization. So that makes it even more difficult to lose weight. How many of you notice that as you've gotten older, it's very easy to put on the pounds, but it's very hard to take them off? And a lot of that is due to this excessive insulin, due to insulin resistance, causing the problems. Insulin causes the retention of sodium. If you eat a really high carbohydrate meal, have you noticed that your shoes feel tight, or your ring feels tight, or your belt feels tight, because you're actually retaining fluid? And a lot of people who have fluid retention problems actually have insulin resistance. It depletes your potassium and magnesium. Your kidneys hold on to sodium, but they excrete excessive potassium and magnesium. And one of the most common symptoms of prediabetes is just feeling exhausted and tired all the time, and you're a little bit more prone to muscle spasms and cramps and things that relate to low potassium and magnesium. diabetics tend to have very low magnesium reserves. It also stimulates a liver enzyme that makes cholesterol. Your HMG-CoA enzyme is what is blocked by the statins. But what's actually causing it to make more cholesterol, one of the four cardinal signs of prediabetes, is the excessive insulin. So we can really lay the cause of prediabetes at the feet of too much insulin. But in terms of your day-to-day life, what's actually giving you grief is glycemic volatility. It also promotes higher levels of inflammation, and so when you start looking at people who have prediabetes, they're at higher risk for arthritis, they're at higher risk for dermatitis and various other itis diseases, inflammatory diseases, because insulin is a pro-inflammatory hormone. This also puts us into a number of vicious cycles. If you have a carb craving, you're going to go for something that you know is going to raise your blood sugar quickly. And those are the infamous white foods, the white sugar, the white flour, the white rice, those kind of things. They tend to have what we call a high glycemic load, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more lately. And it's this pattern that kind of sets up insulin resistance, which causes you to gain the weight, the central obesity. But really what this is coming from that I did not know about, and maybe none of you have heard this term before, but it really is the core idea that I want to get across to you today is that glycemic volatility is very often at the root of your inability to regulate what you eat. Your appetite and your hunger can be out of control for the simple reason that you've got insulin resistance and you've got excessive amounts of glycemic volatility. So the first goal to achieve hunger-free, healthy weight is to have a stable blood sugar. That's really what we're wanting to aim for in terms of helping you to achieve your weight goals and to control prediabetes. The second goal has to do with the fact that the fat that develops as a result of too much insulin is inflammatory. If you have more fat, that means that you're going to have larger fat cells. Larger fat cells means that there's more membrane surface area. That greater surface area exposes those cells to greater oxidative stress, free radicals of one sort or another. That can then damage or injure the bilayer, the plasma membrane bilayer, and that triggers what's called cytokine initiation of inflammation. And so fat is an inflammatory issue. People that have excessive visceral fat will tend to have a higher C-reactive protein. C-reactive protein, which is one of the markers of inflammation, is a cytokine. And it's because of the free radical damage that has occurred. And you don't see it. It's happening at a cellular level. And yet it can trigger all kinds of problems, such as heart disease, such as arthritis, such as Alzheimer's. Even osteopenia and osteoporosis have been found to have an inflammatory component to them. So cellular inflammation is invisible, low-grade, hidden, systemic, degenerative. It accelerates the aging of organs. It makes you tired. It can cause wrinkles, Alzheimer's, macular degeneration. It can cause plaque to build up in your arteries. And all of this stems from insulin receptor dysfunction, insulin resistance. And so prediabetes is a big deal. It is a fundamental cause of why so many Americans don't feel well, why we're concerned about cancer and heart disease and all the inflammatory diseases that we have to encounter in the process of growing older. And again, I'm excited because it's an opportunity to make a change, to change the course of some of these what a lot of us just take for granted as the aging process. And so part of what we do here to help control inflammation is to identify food sensitivities and reduce gut inflammation. Now, that's not going to be the emphasis of my talk, though. That's actually some other talks that I've given. So I want to come back and focus in on this first one, stabilizing blood sugar, because today I have something to offer you that can help you control glycemic volatility, that can help you reduce your insulin resistance, and then indirectly that can reduce the inflammation that we just now talked about. So ideally what we want to do is lower your insulin levels in order to reduce the glycemic volatility. We have to increase the insulin receptor sensitivity, and we know that things such as exercise, and there are special nutrients, conjugated linoleic acid, and a number of other nutrients, chromium, various things can improve insulin receptor sensitivity. The whole idea is to reduce damage to the cell membrane, slow the aging process. One thing you can do that's not a main point of the talk, but just be aware of hydrogenated fats. Trans fats are a major cause of oxidative stress to your cells, so get the trans fats out of your diet. But what can we do about this glycemic volatility? Let's understand a little bit about what is the glycemic index. This didn't print quite right on the computer as I transferred it, but the area under the curve, when you eat a glucose meal, if you go in and have some pancakes and syrup and see what happens to your blood sugar, it's going to go up. Hopefully your pancreas is working. It's going to make insulin. And depending upon how much insulin resistance you've got, you're going to have a curve here. But there's another factor that certain foods tend to cause a larger area under the curve. These are the so-called high glycemic index foods. And the one we use as the standard is glucose or sugar. And the way we developed that was the glucose tolerance test. If you want to go into an endocrinologist and say, hey, how bad is my blood sugar situation, he'll say, well, let's do a 5-hour glucose tolerance test, and you'll be getting 75 grams of glucose, glucola, and they will do this test. They'll measure a number of blood sugar levels, and then you can look at the area under the curve, and that represents 100% glycemic index. But different foods react differently. Now, what I'm going to put in a little proviso here. Different people have different glycemic indexes, and so what I'm showing you up here is what research groups have kind of averaged for the average person. But in general, this does follow what we talked about earlier. If you have white flour, that's got a much higher glycemic index than coarse white flour, cracked wheat, or whole wheat. And most of us has learned the lesson that whole foods, foods that are high in color, tend to have higher amounts of fiber, and they have a lower glycemic index, right? You've all heard this concept, okay? And white flour tends to have a high glycemic index. And so I've actually put some of these foods up there. They're in your chart here. But, carrots, peaches, these kind of things, whole wheat bread, these have low glycemic stress and low glycemic volatility. Now, as you get into baked potatoes, rice, and different spaghetti and different things, the glycemic index and load tends to go up. And this causes glycemic stress. A little simple tip that I think can help all of you: the higher the color, the lower the glycemic index is, the glycemic stress. And so in general, I tell patients, if you don't do anything else, start choosing more color foods. And I'm not talking about M&Ms here, folks. I want you to, if you had the choice between a white potato and a sweet potato has got a lower glycemic load to it than white potato does. So there's a number of things that do determine glycemic load, but rather than going into these, I just want you to think in terms of fiber being the main constituent that affects the glycemic load or index of the food that you're eating. And color, high color means high fiber. Simple as that. Now, what does fiber do for us? Fiber is very important. It decreases the rate of digestion, slows down the gastric emptying, slows the rate of absorption so you don't get that sudden peak of blood sugar going up really high. It decreases the absorption of dietary fat. It tends to bind bile acids and help you to lower your cholesterol. That's good. It can regulate your appetite through any number of mechanisms. There's a whole number of appetite neurotransmitters, the ghrelins and the leptins that we could get into, but we want to keep this real simple. I want to show you just in very clear terms, by taking a fiber supplement, you can automatically lower the glycemic load or stress of whatever it is you're eating. Here is the white bread, 2 slices of white bread. It's very similar to the chart that I showed you earlier. Your blood sugar tends to change and go up dramatically, and you would have a high level of insulin being produced. But if you take that same amount of white flour and mix it with this new form of fiber, it's a natural fiber that was developed at the University of Toronto, you can dramatically lower the glycemic effect of that particular food. So this offers some hope. Basically what you've done when you've added this stuff called PGX, you've lowered the glycemic index of whatever food it is that you're eating. Now what gives PGX its power is that it has much greater viscosity than the average soluble fiber that most of us are used to utilizing as a supplement. One of the most common supplements that have been used for years and years by a lot of people is Metamucil. And what Metamucil really is psyllium powder. And down here, this 6 is the fiber viscosity measurement for psyllium. And then there are a number of other soluble fibers that you can see on the market now. But the one that really stands out now is this polyglycoplex, or PGX. It has about 20 times the fiber viscosity of the psyllium. So it's a very potent form of fiber that can help people reduce the glycemic index of whatever it is they're eating. And so what they've done is they've done extensive testing. This top one is what happens if you eat 50 grams of glucose. It's like a glucose tolerance test. But if you eat that, but you add these different fibers, look what they do. They do lower the blood sugar curve. And the one that lowers it the most is the PGX. The red line here is the PGX. Here's psyllium. Psyllium helps you a little bit, but not as much as what this new fiber does. So just to talk a little bit about it, it's a proprietary soluble fiber blend of 3 natural polysaccharides with exceptional viscosity. And they process this so that these polysaccharides bind together. You can go online and look up pgx.com, and you'll see they've got a whole section on the research on how this was actually formed. But what it does is that it changes and improves the physical and physiologic effects of soluble fiber. It binds more than 600 times its weight in water. Let me repeat that. It binds more than 600 times its weight in water. So if you're going to use this, what's the most important thing you should do if you're going to try PGX? Yes. And probably all of you have tried to work with fiber supplements in the past. You've got to drink the water. The people who have had problems with PGX are the ones who think that, well, maybe just a couple sips of water is all I need. You need 8 to 12 ounces of water when you take the PGX supplement because it binds more than 600 times its weight in water. Hopefully that point is really clear. Produces clinical results at practical dosages from anywhere from 6 to 15 grams per day, which is really not that much. And because it's a super viscosity fiber, 6 grams of the PGX is about the equivalent of 15 to 20 grams of regular fiber. And if you look and see how adding 5 grams of PGX affects the glycemic index of some common foods, like cornflakes has a fairly high glycemic index, up around 85 or so. This will drop it by 34%. Rice, I'm assuming this is white rice, it drops that by 44%. Just an average dinner, it drops the glycemic index of a dinner, and then yogurt, which doesn't have a very high glycemic index, it still drops it a little bit further. So any of these types of foods that would trigger an insulin response, you can modify that with PGX. And so there's been a number of studies done. This is not just something someone just threw out on the marketplace. The University of Toronto and Natural Factors and a number of companies have extensively looked at this. And what they've done is, comparing this to wheat bran, which is another very good fiber, after 3 weeks, this is the insulin sensitivity for wheat bran. But the group that got on the PGX had a significant drop, 50% drop in improvement, I should say, in insulin sensitivity as a result of using the PGX. And basically, what this little diagram is showing is that if you eat your food and it's very low in fiber, it tends to be more likely to cause the hypoglycemic reaction. Whereas if you've got the fiber in your diet, the stretching of the stomach, the stretching of the intestines actually triggers the release of a number of hormones that makes you feel more satisfied. So there's a higher level of satiation when people get adequate fiber in their diet. And one of the big problems with the Western diet is the loss of bulk, the loss of fiber. And so one of the things that I think the PGX is doing for people is it's allowing them to move into a high-fiber diet situation relatively quickly and safely, and to achieve the benefits of high fiber and to help them control their hunger. Now let's actually see if that's true based upon these continuous glucose monitoring strips. This is the strip that I showed you earlier. I think this is dated 7/7/2006. This is the same person 4 weeks later who has been using the PGX and has experienced a 7-pound weight loss. Look at the big difference between their monitoring strip and this strip here. And if realizing that every time the blood sugar drops, that's when you're going to get hungry and you want to go look for something quick to bring your blood sugar back up. If you could live like this, to where your blood sugar is very even, very well controlled and stable, then you would have better control of your appetite, your hunger, your food choices, and you could do a better job of doing what you know you need to do. Most of the people that I see who have struggled with their weight for all the years say, "Doctor, I know what I need to do. I just have a hard time doing it." And so what PGX brings to the table is the ability to regulate this glycemic volatility. Now, I went ahead and had one of our chefs, Rachel, you ready to come on in here? Yeah. This is Rachel Parker. How did you like your food?
Hi.
How long? Now, I suggested to Rachel that she try the PGX. How long have you been using it?
About 2.5 months now.
2.5 months. And
Yeah.
what dose did you start out with?
I started out with one.
Just
at a
one,
time.
one a day?
Yes.
And
No,
then
one
one per
one
meal.
at every meal.
One per meal. And was it the PGX daily or?
It's the PGX daily.
Okay. All right. We'll talk about that in just a second. And so, how fast did you go up on your dose?
I went a week.
About every week you would
Yeah.
add a. So you're
Yes.
So now how many are you up to?
I'm
now?
at 5
per meal.
per meal now.
Okay. And when did you? How long have you been at that dose?
Oh, probably about 2-3 weeks.
2 or 3 weeks. And
Yeah.
and what weight loss have you had during that time?
I've lost 12 pounds.
All right. Has it been hard? Somewhat. Yeah.
You still have to eat
Smart.
and I haven't a couple of
And you're
times. So
going-
I've gone up and down a little
And you're
bit.
going to the Y now and doing.
I joined the Y at the first of the month, and I think that maybe before I joined, I had only lost a couple pounds. So adding the exercise in, it started going down.
Okay.
Other than when I went to the circus this weekend. It went up, and then it went back down. So,
Have you noticed any change in your moods as a result of being on that?
well, with the exercise, too, I've been feeling better. I'm sleeping better.
Yeah.
I had horrible sleeping problems. Have more energy.
Okay.
On an eating aspect, on an eating aspect, I'm not nibbling as much. Being around food all the time, I tend to nibble all day, and I'm not doing that. And there's a long period of time between breakfast and lunch for me, and I'm not even having to snack. I just drink plenty of water. I'm fine.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
All right, Rachel. Thank
thanks.
you very much. Thanks a lot for coming up. I want to tell all of you that I am pre-diabetic. I have 3 uncles that are diabetic, and my grandmother was diabetic, and there would be a lot of days about mid-morning or mid-afternoon I'd get what I call a brownout, where I know my blood sugar was dropping. If I couldn't get something to eat, I would be yawning and couldn't think straight, get really tired, and that's that after-meal sleepiness that can occur, the glycemic volatility. The other point that Rachel made that I want to really reinforce is that this is not meant to be the magic bullet. This is meant to be a helper to help you achieve the results that you want to achieve and to stay on track with a program that you're on. Because a lot of people like I say, they get onto a program but have trouble staying on it. Here's another example of an overweight adult that had demonstrated elevated blood sugar levels with her monitoring, and then after she had been on a 4-week program of another type of PGX, she had much greater stability and was able to function better. She mentioned how she had trouble sleeping at night, and this is a very common problem among pre-diabetics. Pre-diabetics will oftentimes wake up in the middle of the night for the so-called midnight snack because they're having a low blood sugar episode, or because they have a bad dream, because their blood sugar has suddenly dropped during the night. And that has been recorded now with this type of monitoring. And then during the day, you can see the tremendous amount of variability, volatility that they had. After 4 weeks and being on the program, once again, they had utilized the PGX in order to achieve blood sugar stability. That's all we're really talking about here, but it's such an important thing to be able to have an even blood sugar using fiber. This is not a drug. This is all natural products, but it's something that all of us know is important. Who doesn't know that fiber is an important part of your daily life? What this group has found, though, is that a lot of people, even eating a really good low glycemic diet and high fiber foods, they have enough prediabetes dysregulating their blood sugar that the diet alone was not enough. But a healthy diet plus the PGX was able to get them to this even state of physiology. Another example, and showing just the volatility. And this is just a series where, as the person, they started out, it doesn't show up very well, but they had a fair amount of volatility. The little times are when they felt hungry. But as you continue with the PGX, you see that how the blood sugar stability improves with time. So just to recapitulate, the PGX is completely natural and safe. It reduces your glycemic load. It controls glycemic volatility. It helps you control your hunger, reduces your hunger, promotes satiety. One of the things I didn't talk about is that it's got medium chain triglycerides in it, and it's also got a special type of, the fiber promotes the growth of healthy bacteria and can suppress candida. It improves gut motility by increasing bile secretion, and then it helps you lower your cholesterol. This whole thing about lowering cholesterol with fiber is not new to me. My second cousin, Leroy Hunninghake, is a research cardiologist up at the University of Minnesota, and he has published studies online using psyllium as a way to help people lower cholesterol. This works by the same principle, but only more effectively. Now, just to, there's no such thing as a totally free lunch. I do tell people, because the PGX is 20 times more powerful than psyllium, you have to use it with care, and you have to start low and build it up slowly. So if you go too fast, and this depends upon your existing gut microflora. Some people have types of bacteria that will break this down and create gas and bloating fairly rapidly. So that will influence your ability to tolerate the fiber. So you can even have some transient diarrhea, abdominal bloating, or even constipation. So I encourage people to start out slow. This is not a quick fix program. You want to just start with maybe, just like Rachel did, 1 capsule per meal is really a pretty good starting dose. Stay at that for about a week. Be sure you're drinking the water. Give it a chance to work with whatever else you're trying to do with your diet, and you'll find it'll be easier to make good food choices when you don't have the glycemic volatility. Then as time goes on, you can keep working it up until you're, now she's on 5 capsules. They're 750 milligrams, so that's about 3.5, 4 grams per meal. And that's a pretty good dose. Different people need different dosages, but what you want to do is take your time, find out what works for you in order to maintain it. There are some people who take the top dose, 5 grams per meal, and have no side effects. So this is an individual thing that will affect how you feel on the product. Best to start with small dosages, make adjustments every 3 to 5 days or every week, and just go real slow with this. Now I've got a series of Q&As that I've put in here to help you understand this really clearly. What is the best way to reduce PGX side effects? Well, we've already covered that. Be sure to drink 8 to 12 ounces of water when taking a dose of PGX. Okay, that's pretty clear. Can PGX interfere with the absorption of medication? Well, because it does slow the absorption of foods, it could do the same thing with medicines. So the best thing is to take your medicines about 1 hour before or 2 to 3 hours after taking PGX. Otherwise, you may have some slowing of the absorption of your medicines. Why not simply increase the fiber in your diet? Well, that's easier said than done for a lot of people. People are on the go. Fast foods don't always have high fiber choices. Restaurants, you can't always find the fiber that you need. But PGX is a super fiber that outperforms all the other natural fibers, but it works best when you use it with a high fiber, high color, low glycemic load diet. What's the best form to take it in? Well, there's a lot of different forms. You can either do where the powder has been pre-dissolved into coconut oil, or you can use it as a bulk powder, and then there is a protein shake up there that you can use as a meal replacement. Who should not take PGX? Patients with heart or kidney disease who are fluid restricted, or patients with impaired bowel motility or potential blockages such as esophageal stenosis or strictures. So these are some things you need to be aware of, since it does, as it absorbs the water, it forms a kind of a gel in the gut. Do you own stock in the company that makes PGX? No. I own no stock, and I'm really not being compensated for this in any way for this presentation. We normally do not feature products in our lectures, but to me this is something that's unique. It's patented. There's really only one company that's available from, and I find it to be such a powerful aid to helping people control this universal problem, not universal, but almost universal problem of blood sugar instability. And so I just thought we should, to me it's an advance that you don't get a lot of advances that come along like this, and so that's the reason that we're presenting it today. You can buy it really at any health food store. It's available off of the internet. It's not that hard to get a hold of. Is PGX a weight loss diet product? It is not a comprehensive weight loss product, but can serve as a useful tool in a program that addresses all the important facets of safe and lasting weight loss. So here at the center, we look upon the whole person. The whole issue of weight can be very complicated for some people, more so than others. For people that just have trouble controlling what they eat, this may be enough to help them get them on the right track. Most of the people that had the best success, though, were utilizing an exercise program. They were attempting to make better whole food choices, and they were dealing with the stress in their lives. So these are all the various vicious cycles that go into the problem of weight. And I've included here self-defeating thought patterns. Many people have struggled with weight for so long, they have a belief that there's no way that they can ever really conquer it. I've just kind of given up that there's ever a chance for me to get well. I think you can, but I think you have to address all facets of these vicious cycles. And so these are the 5 facets that we've identified: achieve blood sugar stability, identify food sensitivity, choose whole foods, find emotional freedom, and utilize metabolic boosters. One of the nice things about this latest rendition of PGX, the PGX Daily, it's put in 1,800 milligrams of coconut oil, or CLA, and CLA has been known to help improve metabolic activity. But again, you don't want to rely upon this alone. Exercise is probably the very best way to improve metabolic activity. Why am I so passionate about this? I'm the co-author of a book, the Stop Prediabetes Now book. The principal author is Jack Challam. Jack has been working in this field for probably 10 years. He was one of the co-authors of the Syndrome X book, and this really his publishers wanted him to write a new book, an updated book on Syndrome X. This is what we put together, is to Stop Prediabetes Now, because really this is the best way to understand Syndrome X, is that it is a prediabetes condition that you can do something about now to avert the emergence of a disease that no one really wants to have. We do a health panel here at the center that can help you understand the objective factors, what level of prediabetes are you in. These blood tests can help you get an understanding of that. But for right now, I want to just take your questions and see if I can answer whatever it is you have on your mind about PGX? And then we have a microphone at the back here.
My question is about the supplements that I am taking, recommended by doctors here.
Yes.
My instructions before today were to eat some food, take some supplements, eat some food. How does PGX affect the absorption of supplements?
The PGX is really nothing other than a fiber, and so I just have people go ahead and take it with their meal. It's really a fiber supplement. So any other nutrient supplements that you're using can be taken right along with the meal, along with the PGX.
Did you say that no other company is making this product?
Not to my knowledge, unless there's a company that I don't know
Well,
about.
I'm just asking about Melaleuca.
Are they? I don't know.
I don't know either. I'll go home and read
the only
my
one that I know of
fiber.
is Natural Factors, which is a
Okay.
Canadian company.
Okay. Beyond the first 7 pounds in the first 4 weeks, do the studies also indicate there's continued weight loss after the first 4 weeks?
Yes, yes. There are people. Well, this is fairly new, and I don't know how far people go. I was fascinated to find out Sunday when I watched 60 Minutes that people that were having gastric bypass, they will lose about 100 pounds and they won't lose anymore, even if they are like 400 pounds. And so I don't know if there is some kind of stop point in this. There may be. But even for people to lose 10 or 20 pounds, what's really interesting is that the blood sugars tend to normalize as you lose weight. That's the best way to control diabetes, is to start to lose weight. Now, whether or not the weight loss continues over a long period of time, that I do not know.
Since type 1 diabetics have to take insulin with each meal, and will it maybe slow the absorption of that down? And is that all right for type 1 diabetics?
It is okay for type 1 diabetics, but it may affect your insulin levels, because if you are eating high sugar foods, high glycemic foods, you're going to need more insulin. And so if you suddenly now are consuming low glycemic foods and PGX, you're not going to have as much of a need for insulin, so you may have to get your dosages adjusted or self-adjust if you're doing glucose monitoring.
Is there any
Type 1.
Is there any conflict or problem with you're already taking a statin and then you add this?
There is no
lowers your
conflict
cholesterol?
between this and a statin. I wouldn't take it at the same time just because of absorption issues. But once again, you may, if this does its job, you may be able to lower your dose of the medicine with your doctor's okay.
It says that the side effects depends on the microflora in your gut.
Right.
Is there something we can take to increase that microflora?
Yeah, you can use probiotics. There's a number of really good probiotics that are available now on the market. And if you can improve the quality of your gut flora, maybe have less candida overgrowth, there probably would be less gas formation, I would expect.
Yeah, I was wondering, when we say it's natural, but then yet it was developed in Toronto, can you explain a little bit about that process? What's chemical and reactive about it versus, plant-based or whatever?
It's all plant-based. It's made from kojak root and glucomannan, and there's one other alginate or something that's in it. But what they do is it's how they mix it together. It's the mixing process that forms the bonds. If you go to pgx.com, it explains it in detail. But it's one of those examples of using a natural product, putting them together in a way that increases the fiber effect of those products. But there's nothing unnatural about them.
I got some of those, a box of those little packets
Yes.
of the PGX.
How do those fit in?
Right.
Okay, it has to do with dosage. The little packets, the slim sticks, have about 2.5 grams. And the company recommends that if you use that once a day, for a lot of people that might be a good starting point. For some people I find that's too much all at once. So I think you just have to try it out. The idea of it was convenience, that you could take it with you and put it in a bottle of water and shake it up and just drink it. You can sprinkle it onto the food. Some people do not like the texture of, when you put it into water or juice and stir it, you have to drink it fairly quickly, and they don't like the texture and taste of it. but you can sprinkle it on the food and just eat it, but just make sure you drink your 8 to 12 ounces of water with it.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
I had a question about drinking that much water when you eat. I get a little sluggish, so could you take it beforehand and drink the water? And then
actually, taking it about 10 to 15 minutes before the meal with the water is a very good way to do it, because then as it starts to form the gel matrix, you're just not as hungry. You won't eat as much as a result of taking it before the meal. So right before the meal may be one of the best times to take it.
The preceding program was presented by the Center for the Improvement of Human Functioning International in the Bright Spot for Health Lunch and Lecture Series. To inquire about additional health-related information available on DVD, audio CD, VHS, or audio cassette, simply call 316-682-3100 or drop by 3100 North Hillside in Wichita, Kansas. To discover more about the center and what we have to offer, be sure and visit us on the web at www.brightspot.org.